Happy Friday, everyone. We made it through another week. Welcome back to Which is the Moon. I'm your Friday hostess, Natalie. This week's topic, as I'm sure you're well aware by now, is using other people's spells versus writing your own. And here's my take on that. Again, probably going to be short and to the point. This I do have more experience with than haunted objects. However, I will say this. I think that when you are first starting out in the craft, there is a tendency to look up other people's spell work and use it quite extensively. And I think for a lot of people who either don't feel that they're very creative or they're scared to try it on their own or something of those sorts, they tend to stick with using other people's spell work. Now, there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. I mean, we each learn from each other. The thing about that is there comes a point in time when you really need to start tweaking things to suit your own purpose. And I started doing this very early on. When I first started out, I was kind of unsure, so I started learning from a lot of people like Sunshine Morning Ray and the other hosts here on Which is the Moon and other places. I was researching other things. I was looking in books that you buy, that had spellcraft in it, like The Modern Witch by Alexandra Skye. She has some spellcraft in there. I know that Deborah Blake has some spellcraft in some of her books. And I started asking other people how they did certain things because I was still learning what all the correspondences were. Now, as you become more comfortable with correspondences and how things go together, and in listening to your own intuition about what's going to work for you and what's not, I think it's vitally, vitally important for your growth as a witch to step out on your own, start writing your own spell work. And I think where a lot of people get intimidated about doing that is from a lot of these people that say, oh, you're a newbie witch, you don't know what you're doing, or, oh, you're not supposed to do that. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't correspond at all. And here's my take on that. Don't listen. If something is speaking to you, it's speaking to you for a reason. So if you get a sudden urge to use a specific herb that maybe doesn't correspond in all of the books to this specific working, but it's something that's speaking to you, there is a reason it is speaking to you. So incorporate that in your spell work. Now, I just did a video for the biophilic alternative on the difference between a grimoire and a journal. And what I'm going to say is this. Sometimes when I am developing a spell for a purpose, I will jot my ideas down in a journal. But when I have the completed spell, I will transfer that into my grimoire. And I do that specifically with sigils, especially. If I'm working with sigils or I'm going to incorporate a sigil into my spellcraft, I will definitely do a little bit of journaling on it first. I have a little journal that I keep that you can see where I've formulated different sigils either numerically or in the manner that I've showed on other videos where you use the letters to form it. And I find that that's a really easy way for me to come up with my own spell work, to come up with my own sigils, because that becomes the core of my spell work, and then I will formulate everything else around that, what incenses I use, what candles I use, etc., what oils I develop. But I do think that it's very, very important as a witch that you step out and start doing your own spell work, writing your own spellcraft, and don't listen to the naysayers and the haters that tell you, oh, that's never going to work because that doesn't correspond with this and that, or that's never been used, or you're an idiot, that's not the herb you use for that. If it's speaking to you, it is talking to you for a reason. So I highly encourage you to tune those kinds of people out and do what feels right to you. And I've seen people incorporate aspects of Christianity from their backgrounds into their spell work, and if it works for them, who am I to tell them that that is wrong? Okay? Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, whatever. If you're incorporating different aspects of these things, like I know a lot of people who work with the saints in their craft work. Now, I personally don't. To me, it doesn't correspond. But if it has some meaning to them or it helps them to visualize or to get their spellcraft done, do it. And I think another reason that people tend to be very hesitant to start writing their own spellcraft is that they're not versed enough with what they have in their natural environment. And they think that they need to buy or order a lot of supplies in order to be able to do effective witchcraft. And I'm here to tell you that is not the case. Everything you need for your spellcraft to be effective, you got right here and right here. Okay? It's all in the head, it's all in the heart. You can do a spell without ever touching a tool, and I promise you that. It can be just your words, your visualization, and your intention. That being said, we like to have those tools and those herbs and things because they do help us to visualize, or they lend their energies to give our spellcraft a boost. But that's where I say get very comfortable with what's already in your kitchen. Whatever is already easily available to you, whatever's in your backyard, whatever's growing in the area around you, get to know your flora and fauna in your neighborhood and in your household. Because if you can't afford to spend a lot on ordering 6 tons of herbs from Mountain Rose Herbs or Bulk Apothecary or this essential oil or that, you don't need it. And you don't need anything other than the herb and some carrier oil to create your own magical oils. Really, really, you don't. And so I encourage you to get to know what's already in your herb cabinet, what you have in your yard. Get to know those things. Buy a book on the local nature in your neighborhood, and then start researching what's out there and finding out what magical properties correspond to that. And I think as you get to know that better, your confidence as a witch increases. As you start to step out and you start to do your own spellcraft, now, a lot of times when something's not effective right away, we tend to get very antsy. And that's the other thing that I'll say is I wouldn't start out with doing a great big massive spell working right off the bat. And the same thing goes with copying somebody else's spell. If it's a complex or complicated spell, take your time with it. I think it's important to tweak. Now, you can use someone else's spell as a basis for yours if you find that you like the way they do things and there's certain things about it that speak to you, by all means. And if you find a spell that just simply works for you, use it. I don't think there's a problem with using someone else's spellcraft in your spellcraft, but I do think it's important to begin developing your own. So I guess the long and short of it is I don't particularly have a problem with people who use other people's spells. But I think the stronger the witch, the better the witch you are if you can grow your own by writing your own spellcraft. Even if it's taking somebody else's spell as a backbone or a basis or a template and tweaking it to suit you with things that are in your natural environment, already in your home, or things that speak to you on a spiritual level. I do highly recommend that before you do any spellcraft that you do a ritual cleansing of yourself, such as a ritual bath that's infused with certain herbs, or a soap that actually has some sort of a property to it, such as dragon's blood and rosemary. Make your own soap and cleanse yourself with that, or get some from somewhere. I know Tequila sells some in her shop. So Lady Grave Dancer, for those of you that don't know her by her actual name, Lady Grave Dancer, she sells on her soap, The Binding Witches, on Etsy. She sells her dragon's blood rosemary soap, or at least she was. I'm sure if you contact her, she can make you some. But it's easy to make on your own if you just get a melt and pour base and you have some dragon's blood and some rosemary. But I do recommend that you cleanse yourself and that you meditate, especially if it's going to be a working that's going to be very profound for you, or life changing in some way, or that is deep, or is going to take a lot of work or time. So using other people's spellcraft, I don't think there's an issue with it, but I think it's far more powerful when it's your own and it has your own intention in it. So branch out, be creative, allow the goddess and the god to speak to you in your spellcraft, because I think that's the other problem that people have with writing their own spellcraft, is that they tend to shut out their intuition and their voice because they think that there's one right way to do something and there's not. So allow the goddess to come through you, and that goes back to what I was saying about if something speaks to you, it's speaking to you for a reason. So use it even if others say that it doesn't correspond or it's not going to be effective or whatever. Don't listen to that. Do what feels right to you. Put your intention and your focus on your spellcraft, and I guarantee you it'll be far more effective than just carbon copying somebody else's spellcraft. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this week. We're looking forward to seeing you again next week, and blessed be.